So what we have done till now is we have created an array list in which you have 5 elements, and then instead of printing those elements with the help of external for loops or normal for loop and enhanced for loop, what we are doing is we are trying to print those values using internal loop, which is available in Java 8. So whenever you work with for each, you can also use something called as Lambda expression to print the values. So we have seen how for each works, we have seen how Lambda works. Now what we'll do in this video is we'll check how this expression works here, because what we have done is we have seen how Lambda expression works with the help of a normal interface. So we have created an interface which is A, in which you had a method which is show, and then we were trying to print the values of we were trying to implement the interface A with the help of Lambda expression. So let's try to do it in this example. So what I will do is I will just remove the extra code. We just have a list of array and a list of elements, and then we are just printing those values with the help of enhanced for, or not enhanced for loop, a for each loop. So now let's see how this thing exactly works. So when you work with this for each method, it takes a parameter which is the object of consumer. So whenever you write this statement here, it's an object of consumer. Okay, so let me show you something. Let me just comment this part. Okay, so whenever I work with it, but if I say values dot for each, so you can see it says in order to work with for each, you need to create object of consumer. So if I say enter, it needs an object of consumer. So let's say what is consumer here. So what I will do, I will go up and I will say consumer. And since we don't have the package, let's import the package here. And it belongs to a package which is java.util.function.Consumer. Again, this package was not there before. It is available in Java 1.8. It will ask you for the type of the consumer. Time bin will keep it empty. And let's go back to consumer interface. So if you go to consumer interface, it says it's a functional interface. A good news for you, whenever you have a functional interface, we can use Lambda expression. So consumer here is an interface, and this T defines the type. So if your consumer is working with integer, so this will be integer here. So you can change this T to integer, you can make it float, you can make it any type of object you want. Now for this consumer interface, we have a method which is accept. So this consumer method or this consumer interface, which is functional interface, which has only one method, and the name of that method is accept, which takes a parameter. So in order to work with consumer, what we need to do is we just have to create an object of consumer first. So how to get an object of consumer? The problem is consumer is a interface, right? So we need to create a class first, and we'll name this class as cons_impl, which implements consumer. So we'll say this is impl, which will implement consumer. That's how you create an object, right? So we'll say this is consumer. And now since we are implementing this method or implementing this consumer interface, we need to define a method which is this interface consumer. Inside this we have a method which is public void accept. Now, so if your consumer is working with integers, so again you can see we are asking for a type here, right? So what we'll do is we'll mention we are working with integers, and this accept method will take integer I. So depending upon this type, it will define this type here. And we can do anything with that now. We can simply say sout and we can print the value of I. So for given number, you have to just print the number. That's it, right? So we have created a class which implements consumer. Now here we need to create object of, instead of creating object of, okay, let's do it outside. So let's get object of consumer. We'll say this is we'll say consumer for integers. We'll say c equal to new. Now I cannot create object of consumer. We need to create object of cons_impl. Right? That's how we do, right? That's how we create object, and then we can mention here. Wait a minute, no need to mention, and then we can pass c. Now what will happen? Let's run this code. So you can see it is printing the same values. So how exactly it works is whenever you say for each, it will pass those 5 values one by one to this object which is cons_impl object, which implements consumer. So for each will fetch the first value, which is 4. It will send this value 4 to the accept method, and then we are printing 4. Next it will take 5, and then this 5 will be sent to accept method, and then we are printing 5. Okay, why it takes all integers? Because we have mentioned integer here. That's how it's working, right? And if I run this code, you get 5 6 7 8 5 6 7 8, right? Now instead of using, so you can see we are using this object only once, this object which is C. Before that, let's modify something. Before that, let's do something. So we have this class here which is used only once, right? So instead of creating a named class or a class which has a name, we can create an anonymous class, right? I hope you remember in the in inner classes we have talked about how to create an object of interface. So what we'll do is we'll not do it here. We can simply say it is consumer. Now you will say we cannot create object of consumer is because consumer is an interface, right? But we can provide the implementation here itself. We can mention we are working with integers, so that's integer for you, that's integer. And we can define that method which is public void accept, which takes a integer parameter. We'll say int I, and with this int I, let me print the value. Let's print I. Okay, so it takes, so again we are doing the same thing, just we are not using extra class, we are doing everything in the same class, right? So we are creating object of consumer C, and we are creating object in this way, which in which you have to provide the implementation of the interface, in which the method name is accept, which takes a parameter I, which prints the value of I. So the same thing we have did with the earlier class. Now this time if I say for each and if I pass C, so initially I'm passing 4. So this 4 goes to accept method and it takes int parameter and it prints the value. Then it takes 5, then it prints the value, it takes 6, and then it goes on. So that's one way, right? Now what we'll do is if you just focus on this example, what is this? This is anonymous inner class, right? And we are creating this anonymous inner class with the help of consumer interface. So what we need is we can simply, if you focus on this line, so this is for sure, as this is functional interface, so this is obvious thing, right? So on the left side we have consumer interface, consumer integer C. So on the right side also we'll be having new consumer, and inside this consumer you have only one method which is public void accept. So why do you even write that? What we can do is we can remove this part here. We can remove this part, and now since we have removed that curly brackets, let me remove this one also. Okay, now this is your method brackets, okay, and this is the method definition. So whenever you're using something in this way, you have to use an arrow which defines that we are working with some block. So this is your method parameter, and that's the block here. Now since we have only one statement, we don't have to write this curly brackets. So let me remove this curly brackets, even the semicolon, and we can write everything in one line. Okay, so we have written everything on one line. Now when you have integer here, so when you say that we are working with integer, so why do you even mention integer here? We can remove that integer from this way. And whenever you have only one parameter, you don't even require this round brackets. If you have two parameters, then we require those round brackets there. So we can mention I, and we can provide the arrow and the implementation, right? So that means this C is equal to this. Let me just run this before going ahead. If I run this code, you can see we got 5 6 7 8, or 4 5 6 7 8. So you can see we are from the big implementation, we are going for the small implementation. That's the advantage of Lambda expression, right? So instead of passing this thing inside, instead of passing C here, what if we can just copy this part and paste it here? So we don't require this all thing, and you can see this line is equal to this line, and if I run this code, you got the same output. So that's how you can use Lambda expression to work with collections, and you can use consumer interface, which takes a parameter and prints it. Simple, right? So yeah, that's it from this video. So that's consumer interface for you. So if you have liked this video, do subscribe, and thanks for watching.